And we're back with part 2 of our discussion of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. In our previous session, we discussed parts 1 and 2, sections 1 and 2, section 1 being the burial of the dead, and section 2 being a game of chess. And what a fascinating discussion it was. Today we continue with section 3, which is called The Fire Sermon. I'm Mark Will in Taipei.
And I'm a broken Coriolanus in St. Petersburg.
You said
Om
anus.
Shanti. I did intentionally.
All right.
Coriolanus.
Yes, there you go. The Fire Sermon, which is a Buddhist text, is it not? Why does he choose that title for this section? Is he just trying to be clever? Is this part of that erudite despair that we mentioned before?
Feel free not to speak into your cup. So
I'm in my cups over here. It's just tea, people. Don't be alarmed.
I am in my cups. A nice iced whiskey for a hot Russian day.
It's hot. What's the temperature there?
It's 30 and 31 tomorrow. This is about as hot as it gets. Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah.
What's the humidity level like?
I'm not sure, but it's definitely like sunbathing weather. I mean, there was a lady lying nearby, a rather attractive female today, who had taken off her top when she was lying down. I didn't get to see the actual breastises, but
too bad.
Yeah, but I did. You know, it's that kind of weather is the point, and you know, Russians flock to the outside when it's like this, and because we're actually on the water, there are quite a few beaches around here.
But it's humid? I mean...
No, I mean, it's comfortable. There's a nice breeze, and it's beautiful.
So see, that's an important difference, because it's 30 and sometimes higher here, but the humidity factor is off the charts. So, like, as soon as you set foot outdoors, you're in the sauna, and you're just, you know... You walk for 1 minute and you're completely soaked. It's pretty disgusting. So sounds like the breeze. What's that?
I said that's Qatar vibes. That's how it was when I was there.
Well, I do remember that when we were in Vladivostok, it was pretty damn hot there too. But I don't think it was quite as humid as where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're off topic. Although we're talking about heat, so maybe that's appropriate when we discuss the Fire Sermon. So it's
I need to answer your question, Mark. I need to answer your question. Yes.
So, what was the question?
Your question was, is he just trying to be erudite in his despair by mentioning the Fire Sermon?
Yeah.
Or is there
a purpose?
A purpose, and indeed there is a purpose, of course.
Okay.
I think we'll really see that at the end of the poem in section 5. But this is kind of like the first time that it weaves its way into the poem.
Okay.
And so we'll kind of see a maybe more moralistic side of Eliot coming through, and moralistic, and also perhaps redemptive. So this will be the half-hearted, I would argue, way to kind of show us how to evade the wasteland. So we'll get some moral clarity later. But anyway...
Oh, I forgot my tagline. I forgot my tagline at the beginning in the introduction. Let's get wasted.
Let's do it. Cheers to that.
All right. So you've included this excerpt from the Fire Sermon. I don't know which translation this is, but I don't think I've read this, but I've seen this part, I want to say, probably when, studying the wasteland, but why don't you read it?
Sure.
It's a nice passage.
Yeah, and the totality of the sermon is just about a page long. Eliot has commented that for him, this rivals the Sermon on the Mount for its profundity and kind of ability to make a lasting impression in a concise space. And the fire is just all of the passions that arise in us and our different desires and lusts. So just this very short section.
And that the state Eliot himself is alienated from.
Yes, he's superseded it.
He wishes he was more fiery.
Perhaps. Well, Vivian
but instead he's all trussed up. Yeah. Okay, Vivian wished it.
All things, O priests, are on fire. The eye, O priests, is on fire. Forms are on fire. Eye consciousness is on fire. Impressions received by the eye are on fire, and whatever sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, or indifferent, originates in dependence on impressions received by the eye, that also is on fire. Fire!
Nice.
Not sure if that's how the Buddha would have read it, but
yeah, well, and we should point out that is the Buddha speaking to his acolytes, I guess. I was going to say that reminds me of the 60s classic Fire by Arthur, what's his name? I'll have to include that in the show notes. And there's also a Jimi Hendrix Fire. Let me stand next to your fire. All right, so I was going to ask this, like, what about this introduction of Eastern religious concepts? You know, Eliot is often thought of as like an advocate for the Western tradition, but I always thought it was interesting that he included, prominently these Eastern concepts and texts, in the Wasteland. And of course, there's more of that later.
Yeah, I just
so what do you think about that?
It, because right now it's just presented to us as a title, and he'll be much more explicit in the 5th section.
That's true. Okay, so we'll save that, but keep that in mind.
Sure.
Just as the Beatles went to India and became interested in Hinduism and Indian music, and introduced the concept of world music to the popular imagination, maybe Eliot did something to make Anglo-American audiences aware of that tradition. And of course, Pound did something similar with Chinese and Japanese literature and art, right? Not that there was no knowledge of it before, but he did much to popularize.
Emerson had studied this stuff.
True, yes, that's true. But and Whitman and those other transcendentalists and those affected by transcendentalism, mostly through Emerson, I guess, and Thoreau, I would argue.
Sure.
But those things go in waves, right? Like they're popular for a time, and then the popular imagination loses consciousness of them, and then there's kind of a revival. So I was just saying that Pound did something similar with Chinese and Japanese, Far Eastern culture and literature, with his translations of Confucius and so on.
The predecessor to Gary Snyder.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So that, there's before the Beats, there was already this interest. And of course, the Germans were interested in particular, Hindu texts, going back to Schopenhauer, but then later, some of the more nationalistic Germans saw them as the true Aryans, right? All right, anyway, that's a nice little, that's not in the Wasteland, obviously, but it's a nice background for our consideration and discussion of this section, the Fire Sermon. Maybe it can help us understand. We're talking about lust, passions, and the emptiness of those, the ultimate emptiness of those things, right? Like, I think the Buddha would probably say that in the end, fire burns itself out and you're left with nothing, emptiness of some sort. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and to take another macro view of the poem as a whole, and I've already mentioned this in the first section, but we've got these different elements heading different parts of the poem.
Yes.
The one that is the kind of outlier being the previous one,
A game of
which
chess.
is Game of Chess. Yeah, thank you. So we went from Earth and the Burial of the Dead, and fire. It's important to remember in the way that so the game of chess is kind of looking at maybe the tactics of relationships and how they are very calculated, perhaps manipulative. And now we're going to look at, I think, some different representations of relationships that are more rooted in lust, and as you just mentioned, the emptiness of that, the hollow nature, and the ultimate dissatisfaction.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Of those summer nights.
What about summer days?
They precede summer nights.
That was a Bob Dylan reference.
Okay.
Call back to previous episode. All right, so I guess here with this phrase, I was fishing in the Dull Canal. This is the first overt reference to the Fisher King of Arthurian legend. And I've just screenshotted it's the Wikipedia page, right? So let me just read part of this to kickstart our conversation. The Fisher King is a figure in Arthurian legend, the last in a long line of British kings tasked with guarding the Holy Grail. The Fisher King is both the protector and physical embodiment of his lands, but a wound renders him impotent. Eliot likes that. And his kingdom barren. You mean like a wasteland? Unable to walk or ride a horse, or fuck, he is sometimes depicted as spending his time fishing while he awaits a chosen one who can heal him. Versions of the story vary widely, but the Fisher King is typically depicted as being wounded in the groin, legs, or thigh. Autobiographical. The healing of these wounds always depends upon the completion of a hero knight's task. And when I say autobiographical, I'm referencing Eliot, not myself.
Of course,
necessarily.
Of course.
So I don't know why does this character suddenly appear somewhat disguised, right? It just says I was fishing in the Dull Canal. I mean, do you care to comment on that? Is it a particularly powerful illusion?
I mean, I think that you're more knowledgeable on Arthurian legend, maybe more interested in it than I am. I guess the only thing I would note is that at the start of the poem, we mentioned this very important text from Ritual to Romance.
Yes.
It's written by Jesse Weston and looks at symbolism and the Grail legend. So that's how I can help you there.
Well, it's not the first mention of Arthurian legend because we already talked about the appearance of, or the allusion to Tristan and Isolde, right? Who are part of this cycle of myths and legends. But the Fisher King is maybe a more apropos reference because, you know, he symbolizes impotence and barrenness and a wasteland of sorts, right? I mean, his realm, he is the ruler of the realm of the wasteland, you might say. And interestingly, he is associated with water because he's fishing, right? So we talked before about like the wasteland being, is it really land like Earth, or is the wasteland aquatic in some way? And so maybe the Fisher King is amphibious in that sense, right? Like he's on land, but he's fishing in the water. So is that relevant? Does that matter?
Are we gonna address the first section of the Fire Summer at all? Because you've jumped into the second stanza, which is fine. I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to talk about the first stanza, but just asking.
Well, what do you want to say about it? The river's tent is broken. That's interesting too, right? This is called the fire sermon, and the first line references water. The river's tent is broken. The last fingers of leaf clutch and sink into the wet bank.
I like these lines, and it's also
Okay.
maybe good to remind that we're firmly placed in autumn now, as opposed to spring. So we're again kind of following a trajectory there, and
Where's
you
the
get the
specific reference to autumn?
well. The river's tent is meant to be leaves. The
Okay.
tent being the branches overhanging.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The last
and
fingers of leaf. Yeah.
and then we get the Greek mythology of the nymphs. They've departed. Maybe they've departed because we're in the wasteland. Maybe they've departed because summer's gone. And then we're kind of transposed from this potential Greek imagery to the Thames.
Mm-hmm.
This line, "Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song," is an allusion, or is taken from an Edmund Spenser poem called Prothalamion. And but critics argue that it was used like ironically, just because then when he switches to actually describing the Thames, it's all very like dreary imagery, and it lacks that romance that is suggested by this Spencer excerpt.
With the rattle of bones, you mean? At my back in a cold blast, I hear the rattle of the bones, and chuckles spread from ear to ear. That kind of macabre laughter.
I mean, I like this section. It says the river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony of summer nights. The other testimony of summer nights I've read is like meant as condoms.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so again, like all those things would be accompaniments to love or sex.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really know what to do too much with like, and their friends, the nymphs are departed, and their friends, the loitering heirs of city directors, departed, have left no addresses. So, I mean, obviously, it's like suggesting a type of like middle class young person if they're the heirs of city directors. Um, they've left no addresses. I guess just suggests like the temporal nature of these like flings.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after that, you get "By the Waters of Lemon," which is Lake Geneva, in French. "I sat down and wept," and he did write a fair portion of the wasteland there. So it's quite like a strong, jarring shift, right, from this kind of like just imagery of the river and summer to suddenly this guy, to the speaker grieving. I don't know. Just throwing shit at you.
Well, I mean, the river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony of summer nights. The lines that you just quoted. This is saying, I mean, this. this is basically saying that the river we're talking about is also a kind of wasteland, because all of these things mentioned are signs of life and vivacity and,
Yeah,
as you said, love or sex, right? So there's none of that. So
yeah.
the dull canal in which this Fisher King character is fishing is
Mm,
also barren, right? On the other
right.
hand, I don't know, maybe he actually does catch some fish. We if he's if he's only catching like bottles and cigarette butts and so on, that's also not very indicative of fertility. I mean, that's
Right.
kind of like um ecocidal. Well, maybe that's too extreme, but like that's an image of ecological degradation, which is also not. You would associate that more with a wasteland than like a fruitful landscape.
That was my initial thought, but then when like I read the criticism that connected it with love,
Mm-hmm.
I rethought that, and
Oh,
maybe they
you were
didn't.
swayed by the critics.
It's
Okay.
true, but also maybe now I think since we're in the age of eco criticism, we're
Mm-hmm.
very like shaken by pollution, and I am, and litter. But maybe at that time it was more just like the nice paraphernalia that
Yeah.
like they wouldn't freak out about seeing some sandwich papers in the river. I don't know.
Well, make sure you use your paper straws. That'll save the earth. Don't
No, the
use
metal ones are
plastic.
better. Metal ones are
Oh,
better.
of course. Oh, true. Yes. Yeah,
I used
that'll
a metal
save
one
the earth.
yesterday. It's
I use a
delicious.
metal one every day. I have a metal one for
Nice.
my smoothies. So I'm a good person, right? I'm going to heaven, and I'll be right there next to Greta Thunberg. That's the important thing. What straw do you use? Forget about the 1,000 military US military bases around the world. Forget about that and all the wars. The important thing is you, the individual, should use metal straws because it's your responsibility to save the earth. Meanwhile, let the military industrial complex do its thing. Don't meddle with that. And
Metal.
don't critique the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline, okay? That was the worst ecological catastrophe in human history, but don't talk about it. All right, so are we done
Thank you,
with the
Mark.
Fisher King?
We'll edit that out, guys, in post. Don't worry.
Oh no, we won't. That's the best part of this.
Yeah. So
Okay, we done with the Fisher King.
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean,
Maybe we'll refer to him again. Maybe he'll appear again. He'll pop up his impotent head in another section in one
I
form
think
or
if we want to
another.
stick to the text, we can just talk about again about the tone shift in the second stanza. Suddenly we've got a
Mm-hmm.
rat creeping softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank. You may
Beautiful.
remember that they used that word unguent earlier on. So now we've got a
Mm-hmm.
kind of callback to that kind of sliminess, ooziness. Um, and then there's this kind of allusion to the tempest, musing upon the king, my brother's wreck. White bodies naked on the low damp ground, and bones cast in a little low dry garret, rattled by the rat's foot only, year to year. I felt a lot of this was quite obtuse.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't my favorite part of the poem. Not like some
Yeah.
of I prefer some of the working class narrative stuff.
Yes.
But
Hurry up, please. It's time, as you mentioned
yeah, and then we're gonna get the
in
typist
previous
in a little bit,
installment.
which is another
Right.
highlight for me. But I guess there are some important allusions in this stanza. This I don't know how much time you spent with this, but like the section where it says, first of all, we've got tons of allusions here. So the part where it says, "But at my back from time to time I hear," the sound of horns and motors, which shall bring. This is
Andrew
an allusion.
Marvell again.
Yes, yeah.
And he referenced that line in Prufrock too, remember?
Vaguely.
Well,
Vaguely
not
means no,
necessarily
but
that line, but that poem to his coy mistress. Remember the little
yeah.
ball? Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting flip because in the original it says time's winged chariot hurrying near, and here he's changed it to the sound of horns and motors, which shall bring Sweeney to Mrs. Porter in the spring.
Genius. Genius. Brilliant.
Allusions like this don't do that much for me. I don't know if you... So this whole Sweeney, Mrs. Porter stuff is an allusion from Parliament of Bees by John Day. Sweeney is meant to represent a modern-day Actaeon. Mrs. Porter is Diana. And also Mrs. Porter is a song from World War I that was sung by Australian troops, in which Mrs. Porter is like portrayed very sexually, and like it was like a bawdy, like pub type song. So I'm giving you all the kind of, additional footnotes so that you can say something smart, basically. Like I'll provide you with this shit, and then you can...
Yeah, I mean, you did a much closer reading of the text this time than I did. I only picked up... We talked before about how this is kind of a rushing flood and we just grab whatever we can. And in my case, I ignore the rest. Like, I'm not going to look up every single allusion, but it seems like you did. And maybe the first time I read this, I tried to do the same thing. So it's, it's part of the process, but I've engaged with this text so many times that, I remember a lot of it, and the parts that I don't remember, I'm not necessarily going to look up unless it's like something that interests me.
But that's nice, but now, what do you think about this section?
It doesn't make me like it anymore. It doesn't make me, admire it or appreciate it anymore.
So is this stanza anything... do you want to sit with this stanza at all, or not really?
No, I glossed over it.
So you prefer to get to the twit jugs, right? Big jugs.
Oh, section. Yeah, jugs. Jugs are important.
Okay. So...
But before that...
Okay.
We've got this line from Verlaine's Parzival, which is, Parzival, of course, is a character in the Holy Grail cycle of myths. And in this slide, we see Verlaine and his young lover, Rimbaud. So, I don't know, there's just like a random dropping of this one. It's kind of like name dropping, but it's quote dropping. Eliot ending this particular stanza with, after all this English, he just randomly inserts this.
Well, come on. Randomly
inserts this.
No, I don't think
French
so.
quotation.
I'm not buying that.
Break it down then.
Well, one reached.
Here's the translation. And these children's voices singing in the dome. Yeah, yes. Connect it for us.
Well, one thought I had is that so Parsifal is supposed to be resisting sexual temptation, right? In order to drink from the Holy Grail. And if this section is called the Fire Sermon, it's about trying to temper our desires, then it's like after this... Again, that's why I was hoping you might kind of take a stab at this section with Mrs. Porter, because I think we have some kind of just like sexual imagery here. Like it says they wash their feet in soda water.
Sexual imagery makes me uncomfortable, so you're going to have to engage with that.
They wash their feet in soda water. I think in the original it's maybe washing breasts. That's my fascination, I think. But regardless, I think there's something going on there with Mrs. Porter, which I didn't really manage to access, but it could be like, after all that, the exasperated, like, mourning. Remember, the speaker is grieving at the time, right? If you remember that line that we just looked at, where he says, by the waters of Lemon, he's grieving. And so maybe he's saying, like, oh, please, like, resist the sexual temptation, you know? I don't know. That was a bit of a reach, but...
So that's the sermon. That's the fire sermon.
Well, I don't know. Again, I'm just saying that resisting...
Don't touch yourself and don't touch others.
Yes. Okay, thanks for your help with that. Let's get on to a stanza that you're more comfortable with. Do you want to read the next stanza?
Twit, 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 jug, 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 so rudely forced. Tereu. Of course, this is a callback to the Tyrius Philomel rape. Tyrius rapes Philomel or Philomela, and then she's transformed, according to Ovid. She's metamorphosed into a nightingale who can only sing her pain, twit, 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 which sounds like jug, jug, jug to dirty ears, as was mentioned in, what was that, in a game of chess in section 2?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else you want to say about it. It's kind of we already commented on the influence of Wagner in this poem, right? Wagner's music is characterized by these leitmotifs, like when particular characters appear in the music dramas, there's like there's like theme music for each character, and it's repeated throughout the drama. So he's probably doing something Wagnerian in a poetic,
not Wagner-esque
sense.
Wagnerian, both, I guess. Okay,
Wagnerian. I can go with Wagner-esque, but usually the adjective is Wagnerian.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what they say. That's what the smart people at Bayreuth would say. Anyway, I do like that aspect of it. How these symbols can appear throughout the narrative, but somewhat transformed, right? Like the twit, 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 jug, jug, jug appears differently here. The rudely forced is different here with the apostrophe, and then he uses tereu, which I guess is like the vocative form of Tereus.
Yeah. And I appreciate just how he's mixing things up again, right? I mean, if we compare this to more traditional poetry, just to kind of throw a stanza with automatopoeia, staccatoed language, short line lengths, it has a certain element of play, and avant-gardeness or garb that I dig, you know? So, again, for this guy who's quite stiff in many ways, he's taking some risks with language, which I appreciate.
He's got a stiffy. Yeah, man, it's brilliant. He's a genius. Give him his due. Actually,
just a reminder that Mark Will did choose this. Choose this text.
Yeah, because it's an important part of your literary education.
But you've decided that it's an important part.
Yeah.
So you're responsible for it. You know what I'm saying?
Like, you know, to some degree, I'm like, well, but come on, you teach this stuff, right? So don't you feel more confident having engaged with the text and being
I'm
able.
happy that you've chosen it, but I'm saying you're the one who keeps like being really snarky.
Yeah, well,
That's all I'm saying.
because you know, there. I guess there's a certain resentment about the fact that this was always presented to me as a student. This was always presented as like the pinnacle of 20th century poetry in English.
Yeah, I
And
think we've both spoken to this earlier on and
yeah,
kind of
okay.
distanced
Well,
ourselves from
it
that.
bears repeating. It never
Okay.
hurts to reinforce that. We're like Eliot, man. We return to themes. It's variations on a theme.
Yes, yes.
We're
Let's get to the next
modernists.
part because I like it. It's like kind of it's I like the bright
Mm-hmm.
and gay Turkish energy of the next stanza.
That's a nice picture of a nightingale, isn't it? I thought for some reason I had the image of a nightingale being like a dove, but it's not at all. This is just like, I don't know. It's like an uglier bird than I thought.
It's
But
sweet.
maybe huh?
It's sweet.
Okay, but you know what I'm
I
saying? It
love
doesn't
birds,
look like a
man.
dove. Oh, I do
I
too,
lo-
but I'm just saying it's not like a swan or a dove that has that graceful um I don't know, figure. This just, you see this, it's like, oh, it's a bird. It's like it's like a basic bitch bird.
I don't know. Like I would say, if we're talking about the common birds that I have around me, they're like pigeons, sparrows, and kind of crow type things, right? And I would
Okay.
say sparrows are like the most graceful to me. So
Okay.
this type of shape is like more impressive to me in some way.
Do are you familiar with the nightingale's song? Like, does it sing beautifully? I assume it does.
Yeah, I don't
But
know.
I
I would assume so
mhm.
as well.
All right,
But
we're making a lot of assumptions. Next. Okay, so this
no, no,
is
no.
what you were
You
looking forward
skipped.
to?
No, no, no. You've
Oh,
skipped Mr. Eugenides, the Smyrna merchant, which I called myself
okay.
in part one.
So should I, well, we don't have a slide for
Just take
that,
a
so
look at it.
just
Yeah, just take a look at it,
okay.
and maybe I'll read it briefly because it's short.
Yeah, go
Unreal
ahead.
city, unreal city, under the brown fog of a winter noon.
Winter
So now we've
now,
moved. Yeah,
autumn,
exactly.
yeah.
Mr. Eugenides, the Smyrna merchant, unshaven, with a pocket full of currants. CIF London, documents at sight, asked me in demotic French to luncheon at the Cannon Street Hotel, followed by a weekend at the Metropole. So this is supposed to be like yeah, the homosexual stanza, although he denied that, which just seems either naive or concealing.
Well,
But
maybe it's one of the feminine voices. Is that not
that's
possible?
the other argument I've heard as well. But
Yeah.
that just seems unlikely to me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so Mr. Eugenides is Greek for well-born,
Yes.
and apparently he's using that ironically. Smyrna is like now Izmir in Turkey.
Turkey, yeah. Which was part of Greater Greece at one time.
Okay, yeah. The pocket full of currants bit is like jumps out at me quite a bit because people seem to make a lot of it. And currants, I guess, is like the fruit,
Mm-hmm.
and fruit he's trying to sell. I guess. I mean, this is quite a weird stanza for me. Um, so I don't know which part to look at first, but the idea, I guess, is so he speaks in demotic French, which is demotic meaning like a lower class dialect, to luncheon at the Cannon Street Hotel. This is like a famous homosexual meeting spot, and so is the
Oh, it
Metropole.
is. Okay.
Yeah,
You've really done your research.
very superficially, actually. This is like all stuff that you get in any kind of any
This is Cannon Street Hotel is in London?
Yes.
Okay. What's CIF London?
CIF means carriage and insurance free. So I think the idea is somehow...
I knew you would know that. That's why I asked.
Well, I didn't. I only know because I looked it up. But yeah, it's...
I know. I knew you had looked it up.
Okay. So... the idea is that he's like a hustler, I guess. Documents at site. It's supposed to... maybe his like passport or something. Again, I'm looking to you to give me your sagely reading of this stuff now that I can feed you the illusions.
Complimenty, you bitch.
Yeah. Well, you'll get some complimenty if you can make something of this. That's the point.
I can't, man. This is the part that... one of the many parts that I just glossed over. I go with the flow and then move on to the next thing. Like, all right, I don't care who Mr. Eugenides is.
Okay.
Smyrna. I did look up Smyrna and I remembered it. Yeah, it's Izmir in Turkey. There's I think there's a reference to Smyrna in Catullus. Like, someone wrote an epic on Smyrna and Catullus like lampoons or satirizes it. It's like I think that's the book that he calls Kakata Karta, the shitty book. But I don't know. It was like one of the contemporary poets that Catullus was not impressed by, or was one of his rivals. So
as I said, I liked this distant connection to Smirdiakov in Brothers Karamazov because he's like that kind of, right, the Weasley character, the probably the most loathsome and dirty character in the story. One would argue, right?
In Brothers Karamazov.
Yeah. No, I mean, the cheap and easy reading then again would be like, okay, this section's about what love has been reduced to, and it's been reduced to like a homosexual proposition.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
And, just, again, that cheap, temporary way that people are interacting sexually in our modern age after the fall.
They found each other on Grindr.
Exactly. Okay, so anything with a pocket full of currents? I mean, currents kind of sounds like currency.
Yeah, and I don't know, it sounds vaguely sexual.
Yeah, like what, like balls?
Well, I don't know if anything related to fruit could be sexualized, right?
Well, Austin Powers said something about, like, I think he calls it like twig and berries. So
okay, there you go.
I can see that kind of
the currency of balls.
Another critic I read will make the connection between these currents and like the currents that appear later, as in like the river currents.
Oh, so deep, so deep.
He got a promotion. He got tenure for that.
Yeah, we changed an A to an E. Currents. Yeah. Take that, you lit crick motherfuckers. All right, can we go to Tiresias?
Yeah, I mean, the way that the next stanza starts is quite nice. The violet hour. He likes to use the violet hour throughout the poem. I'm kind of at the violet hour here, although we're at white nights, so it's still pretty bright.
Yeah.
Where when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine. So this is interesting too, because you kind of get in this mechanization of the human, right? We're being turned into an engine now. So again, we've lost our soul, like a taxi throbbing, waiting. That's where we get to your boy Tiresias.
I, Tiresias, though blind, throbbing between two lives, old man with wrinkled female breasts, can see at the violet hour. Yeah, Violet Hour is nice.
And it
Nice
sounds kind of
description
like
of, I don't know,
violent or
Twilight.
violated, which I've heard
Mm-hmm.
also from critics.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so why don't I think you should help the audience a little bit more if they may not know who Tiresias is, because this is like a hugely significant part of the poem. So
Well, I mean, his transformation is that he is changed into a woman. The man Tiresias is transformed, metamorphosed into a woman, and then he eventually changes back and appears in Greek tragedies as a prophetic figure. Um, his significance in this poem is that he's sometimes thought to be. It's thought that Tiresias might be the true narrator of the poem. This kind of um, hermaphroditic voice, which is neither male nor female, or both male and female, but takes all shape shifts and takes all these other forms. Can appear, can be like the origin of all of these polyphonic voices.
is this a character that you like? I mean, have you ever made references to him in your work, or has he inspired anything in you?
Not explicitly, but the punishment, the punishment of transformation was caused when he with his staff, um, you know, struck these copulating snakes, and so the snakes are those intertwined snakes, the caduceus of Mercury or Hermes. That's an image I've played with in my writings about um, Cadmus, the Phoenician, for example, who is associated at times with Mercury or Hermes. So
Do you
there's I
like
don't know.
Tiresias? Do you find him a sympathetic
Yeah, I
personage?
mean, I don't dislike him. Sure, like he could be a useful image of the, I don't know, the non-gender aligned prophetic voice, or
Well, he's
the,
kind of noble, right? In a way, like he's suffered to get this wisdom,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he reminds me of
David Bowie.
that the Greek philosopher. Like you have a Greek philosopher, like the dude who walked around in the garbage can. Who's that?
I don't know which one.
The famous philosopher who was like homeless and just was dirty, never showered, and some. I think his name starts with a D. You don't know?
Um, yeah, I know who you're talking about. He told, or
Diogenes.
Diogenes said, if I were not Alexander, I would be Diogenes, right? Is that who you mean?
Yeah, I mean it
And
is Diogenes though.
Alexander tried to talk to him, and he's like, "You're blocking the sun. Leave me alone."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
And then Alexander said, "Were I not Alexander, I would be Diogenes." Yeah.
yeah, but
Okay.
I don't know.
Did he identify as a woman? But what is a woman? Who knows?
All right, I'm gonna give some quotes uh,
He just
from
laughs it
Eliot's
off.
notes.
Okay.
All the women are one woman, or one
One
woman.
women? Okay.
All the women are one woman, and the two sexes meet in Tiresias.
Yeah.
Um, and then another quote from Eliot: he's the most important personage in the poem, uniting all the rest.
There you go. That's so that wasn't an original idea of mine. I think I probably saw that quote within the last week or so, and that's why I was thinking
Hmm.
of it. So it's from the the man himself. He says that's the way it should be interpreted. So take that for what you will. But
Before we get into maybe this, go on.
okay.
No,
Well, I
go
was
on.
just gonna say the reason he's important here in this section especially before the next section, is that he's kind of like the prophetic voice who has this ancient authority, and he's viewing like the modern interaction between the sexes too, with the young man carbuncular and the the typist, that comes home and lays out her food in tins, which is, I
Hmm.
mean, it's pretty, his Eliot's depiction of the relation between the sexes is pretty vulgar and vile. Not that that is an invalid view, but it's like, compare that to Laurentian sexuality, like, this is not exactly Lady Chatterley and her lover, the gamekeeper. This is a barren
Agreed.
kind of, yeah, kind of.
But couldn't you
Mm-hmm.
argue that Lawrence was equally despondent about relationships, and then that Lady Chatterley's lover, the whole point is like that's the exception. Like this is what love
Yeah,
can
but at
be.
least
But
he admits and can depict that possibility. Do you think it's like Eliot can't even imagine it, maybe because of his own lack of personal experience or satisfaction or fulfillment, or whatever the case. But can you imagine him writing a scene in which there's like tantric Kama Sutra style sex? I don't think he can even conceive of that. Maybe he should have listened more closely to Russell. I'll bet Russell could have, you know, explained that to him or
I'm talking about
demonstrated.
Bertrand Russell, guys, not Russell Brand. Just
Yeah, yeah. Sit over there on the couch, Tom. I'll show you how to pleasure Viv. You know
um,
what I'm saying, right? Like the
I
whatever
do know,
the.
and I think my
Hmm.
addition was worthy, and then yours was doubly
Sure.
worthy, if that
No,
makes sense. So
yeah, it
like,
is the exception, but at least Lawrence understands there is that possibility. Can
sure, yeah, and I
Elliot even
agree.
conceive of that? That's the
Right.
question.
So Elliot's answer to everything is like denial, but it could be like he's using denial as like a escape or a defense mechanism rather than because he can't indulge fully. He hasn't found a way to fully engage with his desires. I mean, that comes back to Blake saying like the road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom, right? Like he, in
And
theory, we don't have.
sooner murder an infant in its cradle than nurse unacted desires. That's also
And
Blake.
yeah, absolutely. And I think I've even got one more quote for you, which is Prudence is a rich, old, ugly maid courted by incapacity.
There you go. And that's what Elliot is, a rich old ugly maid
Anyway, I would just say
who
that
secretly wants to go to the metropole with Mr. Eugenides.
perhaps
Very
this
possibly.
is this is gonna blow up on YouTube.
We're going
Um,
Freudian here.
so last thing that might be interesting to you is I was reading a lot today about Pound's influence
Mm-hmm.
and all the edits that this critic cites as being Pounds are actually really good. Like I agree with all of them. And
Mm-hmm.
just to give you one example, I could wait on this a tiny bit, but might as well before we get into the stanza. So there's a in line 251. Maybe I should save this, but fuck it. Her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that?
This
And
is about the
originally,
typist.
yeah, the typist. So this is
Mm-hmm.
like after she's, and we'll talk about the narrative in a second. But her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Um, the line originally was across her mind, one half-formed thought may pass. And Pound wrote in a note, "Make up your mind, you Tiresias, if you know. If you know damn well, or else you don't." And
Hmm.
he also like when there was I think there was the word perhaps at another stage, and Pound also like pounded on that. So he just wanted him to write with a stronger voice. And I liked that idea that like if you're Tiresias, no, so I kind of appreciated that.
I'm still not
So
finding it. But carry on.
all right, well, we get the introduction of Tiresias, and again, he's this prophetic figure, but he's also kind of like the dispassionate observer, right? Like
Yeah.
in Oedipus Rex, he watches the society
Yeah.
collapse.
He's almost like the chorus. He's kind of associated with the chorus in that
Mm,
he's just commenting on the scene.
right.
But also
So
he knows in advance, right? He is a prophet,
yes,
so he can foretell it
yes,
all. He knows how the scene is going to play out.
that's right. So we get the introduction of Tiresias in line 218, and
Then
then we get another working class story about the typist and
and
the young man Carbuncular.
yeah, look at that slide.
Very nice.
There he is
So
squeezing his carbuncle. I mean, a carbuncle
yes,
is different from a pimple, but I imagine him as just like a pimply, not necessarily adolescent, but young man.
yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
literally. But this is quite a sordid scene, right? Like he just wants to get laid, and then the typist, what does she want? She wants attention. She's How does he describe her? Um, oh,
Well, does he describe her?
remember the wrinkled breast. Now we have wrinkled dugs.
I
That's
love
nice.
that.
Perceived the scene and foretold the rest. I too awaited the
Mm.
expected guest. So the young man arrives, one of the low on whom assurance sits as a silk hat on a Bradford millionaire. Okay, fine. The time is now
Great imagery.
propitious, huh?
Great imagery.
As he guesses the meal is ended. She is bored and tired. That's how she's described. Endeavors to engage her in caresses which still are unreproved if undesired. So she doesn't really want it, but she's like, well, whatever. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pretty sad
I
and
mean,
gross and
I,
sordid. Not
I think you
that
should keep going.
it's not realistic. Flushed and decided, he assaults at once. So it's conceived of as sexual assault, almost like rape. Exploring
Mm-hmm.
hands encounter no defense. His vanity requires no response and makes a welcome of indifference. Oh,
That's a
she
great
doesn't
pair of
care,
lines.
but it's also pretty appalling, though, isn't it?
Sure, but his vanity requires no response is also
Mm-hmm.
fantastic.
And I, Tiresias, have foresuffered all and acted on this same divan or bed. I, who have sat by Thebes below the wall and walked among the lowest of the dead, bestows
Do you
one
know who that's a
final
reference to?
patronizing kiss and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit. Um, what the
Quiz
thieves?
question. You can get
The thieves
there's 50
reference?
possible points. There's 50 possible points, and you can get 25 for each. The reference walked among the lowest of the dead.
I, who have sat by Thebes below the wall and walked among the lowest of the dead. I mean, Thebes is the site of many a Greek tragedy, including Oedipus. Is it something related to that?
Nope. Let's focus
Okay.
on the lowest of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
So he's low. Who did he go low with?
Who did he go low with? Tiresias?
Mm-mm. What's been
No, wait.
referenced a lot
No,
in the
wait. Are
poem
we
and
talking about Tiresias?
sorry. Yes, 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 sorry.
Yeah. So who did Tiresias go low with?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know. Who?
Dante is one. He accompanies
Ah.
Dante,
Mm-hmm.
and again. I don't know any of this shit, right? So I'm not like, pretending like I know this shit better than you. Just giving you my. And then Odysseus as well. Apparently, he accompanied him to Hades. So
Okay.
he's
In
like the.
Dante, not in Greek myth.
No, I think in Greek myth he accompanies Odysseus. I mean, I think it's on two separate occasions. But again, I don't. We'd have to look that up.
No, but
I don't
you're
know if we want
saying
to do that in real time.
that's a that's part of the Inferno narrative. You're saying.
Both though, like in separate situations. Like
The Odysseus part,
yeah,
not the Dante part.
yeah, they're both like in the Inferno and also just in Greek mythology.
Okay, okay.
In the
Um,
Odyssey, Odysseus calls up spirits of the dead. Tiresias' spirit arrives from the underworld.
okay, okay. Yeah, among others. I mean, I don't specifically remember Tiresias being there, but yeah, why not?
Okay, yeah.
He sees Achilles too.
Okay, so bestows one final patronizing kiss and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of like he's descending into hell too. So I mean the carbuncular guy,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Carbuncles. So okay,
Carry on.
she turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of her departed lover. Her
Mm.
brain allows one half-formed thought to pass. Well, now that's done, and I'm glad it's over. When lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again, alone, she smooths her hair with automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone.
See, I think this is an example of how Eliot can corrupt youth. Like this is this is the depiction of sexuality. This is what it is. Like maybe after Eliot makes love to a woman, that's how she does feel. Well, now that's done, and I'm
Well,
glad
that's
it's over.
unfair. That's not fair because Elliot's
Why
not going to
not?
behave like because Elliot is too self-conscious to behave like that guy did. He
No,
may
but that
be like
okay, maybe that part, but I I can imagine Viv saying something
no,
after
that's
after
bullshit.
after intercourse with Tom. Well, now
That's not
that's
fair.
done, and I'm glad it's
That's
over.
not fair. She
Okay,
she's
so
fucking
she
stalked him after he broke up with her. He would like she was like going up to the publishing house and basically like going mental. We talked about that in Proofrock. She
you're getting quite
attending his
emotional about
lecture.
this. So you don't want to impugn his coxmanship, huh? Call
I'm
back to
happy
the
to
network
impugn
episode.
I'm happy to impugn his cockmanship, but I'm not happy to say that he doesn't have ability to like deeply connect with a woman.
Oh, you said connect. All right, we're an hour in, and that connects to the next slide, which says, I can connect nothing with nothing. Oh, I thought we couldn't connect. Or are we just connecting one nothing
Hold
with
on, are
another
we? I
nothing?
just think, look, again, we can
Oh.
take different approaches to our reading today,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's more prudent to at least like we can go fast through certain sections, but I think it's negligent to just completely skip the
I
poem,
agree,
like
man. Let's
chunks of the
slow
poem.
down. Let's devote 2 hours to each section.
We're doing okay, aren't we?
We're
We're
an
almost
hour
to what
in.
we're
We're an hour
yeah,
in.
but we can get through the next section is pretty short,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're basically in the last section.
All right.
So,
Then what else do you want to say?
uh,
The gramophone reminds me again of Shakespearean rag. Maybe that's what's being played.
I mean, Elliot seems to be. I wonder Elliot's attitude towards this girl. Is it like, where's the line between sympathy for her and like criticism of her indifference? You know, that's like one question I have. This is
Mm-hmm.
a reference from Oliver Goldsmith's novel The Vicar of Wakefield, When Lovely Woman Stoops to Folly.
Mm.
I think I read today that Auden, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, but was especially moved by this section of the poem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Fine, we can skip that. Then we got Tempest reference to start the next stanza. The music crept by me upon the waters. Um, in the next stanza, we're back to the Thames, and it's clearly not an idyllic place. I mean, it never was really, but if we think about the summer scene again, then we come back to the river sweats, oil and tar. It's quite an evocative. I know I like that word, but it's like a word I like right now, so I'm not ashamed to use it again. I like that opening to that stanza. Um, Lots of references. I don't know if we want to get into them. I'm not particularly fussed. We get references to Queen Elizabeth I and Lord Robert, the Earl of Leicester, who were lovers but couldn't officially marry, I think, for political reasons. That's what I read.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Wela la 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 ref is from Wagner's Ring Cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've done my part there.
Wea la la lea, wala la la lea la la.
Yeah. It reminds me of something like wasn't there
If
like there
there's
was
a
some kind of YouTube
Germanic, if
video? I
there's
feel
a
like
German pronunciation, it would be a bit different.
yeah. So apparently, again, I've got some more notes for
Via,
you. Is
via
that
la la laya, via la la via, via la la laya, vala la la, via la la. All
so
right.
apparently line 266 or so is where we get the beginning of the Song of the Thames Maidens.
Okay. I don't.
Okay, so
My
it's like
text doesn't have line numbering, so just.
okay, so the stanza with the river sweats
Mm-hmm.
is where he's basically taking Wagner's ring cycle and replacing the German references with English ones. I guess in the Wagner piece there are some sea women. I don't remember some kind of maidens who are protecting some gold, right? Rhine gold, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're the Thames maidens. So, and then I've got written down that on line 292, with the stanza that begins "Trams and dusty trees." Now the Thames maidens are speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to begin with another depressing sexual encounter. By Richmond, I raised my knees. Supine on the floor of a narrow canoe is supposed to suggest a sexual encounter. And another one that is marked by disconnect. My feet are at Moorgate and my heart under my feet. After the event, he wept. He promised a new start, so this guy felt guilty. Maybe like he had some kind of like premature ejaculation. And then the character responds, "I
Oh,
made no
I
comment."
just woke up. Premature ejaculation. What?
That's how I see this. It's just like the guy is like being clumsy, and then the woman again is just like indifferent. I made no comment. What should I resent?
So if you
And
bust a
then we
nut
get
too soon, you can say "wea la la lea, wala la la lea la la."
exactly, exactly, and all will be okay. Uh, all right, so now we're at the stanza with the slide on Margate Sands.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, I can connect nothing with nothing. This is a memorable line, open to multiple interpretations, but for me, this is one of the highlights. How did you
Expand.
feel about it? No, I I like the phrasing, and I agree. Eliot can connect nothing with nothing in all senses. I mean, you could interpret that as, well, what are the multiple interpretations? You can't connect anything with anything. That could be one. But you could say it means I can connect one nothing with another nothing. So it's something with something, but that something is nothing. Each of those somethings is a nothing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which it probably doesn't.
I don't love it because it's a bit. I feel like it's again kind of one of those heady phrases that critics bust a nut over, but which isn't necessarily like that
and hot
incredible.
Girls have tattooed on their back.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I've measured out my life with coffee spoons.
Exactly.
Do I dare?
From the Starbucks barista.
Do I dare to disturb? Do I dare disturb the universe? I can connect nothing with nothing. So you put one on your back and then one on your arm, and then you're a true Eliot groupie.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I'm gonna have this tattooed on my nutsack. I can connect nothing with nothing.
Well,
la la lea, wala la la lea la la.
I like the ending to this section. We get this merging of Saint Augustine and the Christian tradition with Buddha, and so it starts, "To Carthage then I came, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. O Lord, thou pluckest." Burning.
He said, "I came."
We know, and that's why I have a burning sensation. It was a bit too. The tension was too intense.
And when I came, I screamed, "Wea la la lea, wala la la lea la la." Carthage is another unreal city. We had the list of unreal cities. There was Paris, Vienna, Jerusalem, Athens, London, of course. Now here's Carthage too. Add that to the list of unreal cities.
Why is it unreal?
Well, it's just, why are any of the others? It's just that Baudelarian dream city, right? Like, even though...
I know, but is he explicitly called Carthage unreal?
No, I'm just saying any mention of a city in this poem, I think, would very likely be associated and very naturally be associated with that phrase "unreal city."
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is this? Did you look that up? To Carthage then I came. Is this
yeah,
like,
I looked it up. Don't worry.
Aeneas, Dido and Aeneas?
It's from the Confessions of St. Augustine.
Oh, okay.
And he went to Carthage, where he was beset by a cauldron. A cauldron? Is that a cauldron? Cauldron of unholy loves, and he was. So again, he was just like assaulted by lusts and stuff.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what he talks about in his Confessions. He was basically a sex addict until he found Christ, right? So, that makes sense that the allusion to him would be in the fire sermon section. Yeah.
By the way, shout out to two people. Shout out to two people right now. One, Kaveh Zahedi, and I'm trying to think how I made this reference. Because you just said sex addict. So yeah. So Kaveh Zahedi had the Confessions of a Sex Addict, right? Is that the exact title? Anyway, by request, Joe and Gareth are gonna cover that film in the next episode of 10 terabyte hard drive. So maybe we can post a link to that. I'm looking forward to listening.
Yeah.
And the other film that they'll be covering in that episode, I watched half of yesterday. It's called Shall We Dance? 1996 Japanese romantic comedy drama. Have you seen it?
No.
apparently it was like covered by a Hollywood version, which
Mm-hmm.
I'm less keen to see, but which has like J-Lo in it. But
Is it? Oh, yes. Okay, I know that.
and Liliana had seen that one, and so when I
I
told her
think
that
I
this is the
have too.
original,
Is
she
that
was
the
pretty
one with Owen
surprised.
Wilson?
I know that there are a lot of
No,
celebrities in it.
that's Marry Me. Okay, anyway, I can't believe I
This
know
was
this. As I'm looking,
this was
as I'm
Richard Gere, Jennifer Lopez, and
yes,
Susan
yes,
Sarandon.
yes, I know about that. Susan Sarandon's in it. This married man. I haven't seen that. For some reason, I was reading a plot summary of it like recently. I don't know why. Maybe it was on HBO or something. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Um, that's interesting. Richard Gere was in another Japanese remake, the one about the loyal dog. That was a Japanese film, and then Richard Gere did a remake. All right.
Okay.
Anyway,
Have you seen I'm a Sex Addict, by the way?
no, just the trailer.
Okay, we should watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Joe links it in his
Okay.
description, so you can download it from there.
Okay.
All right.
What happened to getting him on the pod? Kaveh himself. I thought you were corresponding with him, trying to get him on the show.
Briefly.
He refused.
Briefly. I think he didn't outwardly refuse.
He blocked you.
Anyway,
He's too
let's not
big.
hate.
He's too fancy for us.
He's not that big. He responded.
Okay.
He loved our podcast.
He did.
Let's give him some
let's
daps.
follow up. Let's tell him his text is the focus of an upcoming episode, and we'd like his insight. That would be interesting.
You mean Joe's episode?
No, Kaveh himself. No,
right,
we can pick Confessions of a Sex Addict as a textual.
I don't want to
focus.
do the same thing that they're doing.
We're not. We're actually having
Kaveh
on.
Confessions of a Sex Addict.
Yeah, but we're gonna do it. We have precedence here. You discovered it. We already talked about him in, I think, the second episode of this whole project, right?
I get it. I'm just saying I would rather cover a different film of his.
If we can get the real guy here to discuss it.
Yeah, but he's got other works, is my point. We could cover a show about a show, for example.
Yeah, but I'm more interested in the sex addict documentary, self-documentary.
Okay.
Anyway, as we're talking about this, I think this is a very textually deviant phrase. I can connect nothing with nothing. Isn't that what intertextuality is all about? Connecting all of these nothings, which are both something and nothing.
Yeah.
That's how we do it. All right, let's move on.